Hey guys, welcome to my very first YouTube video. A little bit about me. My name is Ariana. I run an Instagram page called @_sassy_scientist, and it is dedicated to mindset, mentorship, and resources for first-generation women who want to pursue higher ed degrees in STEM. I am a second-year bioengineering student who is getting a PhD. And this video is for you if you are thinking about pursuing a STEM PhD and want a little bit more information on what it entails and where you could really go with it. So a PhD is a doctoral degree, and it usually takes on average about 5 years to complete. So you usually take classes for the first 2 to 3 years, and then you do research for the whole duration of your 5 or so years that you're there. So your research project can really be on whatever you're interested in. It should be a collaborative effort between you and an advisor of your choice, so a professor at a university that you agree to work with for 5 or so years. And it is a funded position, so PhD students get a stipend that usually correlates with the cost of living in the state that the university is in. So if you want to pursue a PhD in STEM, it will probably require a lot of lab work, maybe working with cells, running those kinds of experiments, coding, data analysis, computational modeling, the list goes on. STEM and engineering is a very multidisciplinary field, so you never know what you could end up doing in this field. So different career prospects for people with PhDs. I like to think of it as you can do anything, but maybe not everything all at once. So I think if you want to work in industry and be a scientist, engineer in industry and research, whatever, you come in as a sort of like senior scientist, lead researcher, or maybe even a project manager. You never know. You could also be a professor. So you could either be just a teaching professor, so you don't run a lab at a university, but you get to teach a lot and interact a lot with the undergrad students and the grad students. Or you could be tenure track. So these are going to be the people who are already who were advisors to graduate students when you were a graduate student. And you can work in the startup area. So I don't know if you're really into like biotech or you want to start your own company, you want to be an entrepreneur. You could even work in policy, so science policy specifically. You could be advocating on the Hill for more STEM funding if that is what really lights you up. So I think starting salaries for a PhD, depending on the position, can be anywhere between $70K a year to $100K plus. So you do have a good earning potential, I think, after getting a PhD, but it shouldn't be your only reason for pursuing the degree. So what a PhD really means in terms of what kind of skills you get out of it and what you could market yourself as to potential hirers and companies. So getting a PhD means you're basically a learner and someone who can learn really well. You're able to problem solve, analyze data, communicate, and even manage projects extremely well, because that is essentially what you did for 5 years to earn a PhD. And these are all skills that you really need in any field. A little bit about the pros and the cons of getting a PhD. So I'm going to start with the cons because it definitely is not a walk in the park. I think one of the biggest cons is that it is a pay cut for about 5 years. And there's probably statistics and numbers out there for maybe how much money you lose by doing a PhD, but it's a pay cut and you don't really get retirement benefits either. If that's something that's really important to you, you don't have the option of having a 401k that maybe your colleagues do who work in the field that you're interested in already. So like I said, the stipend is determined by the cost of living in the state that the university is in. But my favorite thing to say about that too is that the university's definition of living and your definition of living may not be the same definition. So definitely think about that as you're thinking about going into a PhD in STEM. A A con, and I think this goes without saying, but a PhD is really hard. It's a rigorous mental marathon. I mean, technically, all the experiments and manual labor that you do could probably be done in less than 5 years, but the mentality behind it and the sort of, the drive to push yourself past all this work can be really difficult, and it's really easy to let your mental health and physical health deteriorate or just take a backseat and not be a priority as a grad student. So I think that is something that you should also be aware of. And it's a con of getting a PhD. It's hard and takes a toll on everybody. The third con, and I think maybe this is definitely not talked about, is that you're also navigating a space that is traditionally designed and dominated by white men. So because of that, it may not have the support structures that you would need to feel that you could really carry on and that you're supported by this program. And what I mean by that is if you're a woman of color, a man of color, or a person of color in general, maybe you're LGBTQIA+, there may not be the immediate resources and structures within that department for you to feel supported, for you to feel like you have people to turn to. And it can be especially hard trying to find a community in a place, again, traditionally designed and dominated by white males. So I think if you're going into a PhD in STEM, it's important to think about it, especially during your transitions periods into the program. Think about where you could find a community. Think about how you can find your support system. And if you can't physically in person find that in your university, then know that there are definitely resources online, social media. I mean, I didn't know STEM people on social media really existed and were thriving until second year of grad school. And I've been in STEM for maybe 6 years more if you count my interest in high school. But there are lots of people out there who maybe can provide the resources and community that you're looking for. You may not get in your PhD program specifically. My last con, and I think this goes back to the rigorous mental marathon, is that you can put so much of your time and effort into getting all these experiments done as a grad student, but your physical output may not reflect that. So say you've been working so hard for 2 years or so on these set of experiments, and that only really got you one publication and maybe one, and not even one A, half an A maybe. So it can be really discouraging, I think, because we are on a sort of capitalistic mindset. Input has to equal output. There has to be some sort of tangible product that I can see, and that is a mark of accomplishment. But in a PhD program, you may not have those milestones that are easily seen. And it's easy to feel like you are not being successful in that program. So back to that rigorous mental marathon, it's something to be prepared for. So now time for the pros of being a PhD student. So after I took you down a little bit, I'm gonna bring it back up. You have a very, very flexible schedule. I mean, this is all advisor dependent, of course, but in general, graduate students have a very flexible schedule. If your prime working hours are 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., then that should be totally fine if you get stuff done. So I think if you maybe have a family, you have young kids, have to pick them up from school, it can be a really big plus to have a flexible schedule. The second pro is that you have a lot of creative freedom to pursue a project you're interested in, and hopefully it'll be something you're interested in, but it will be a contribution to the scientific field, and it's really, you are answering questions that nobody has answers to. You are a leader in the scientific field, and I think that is one of the main reasons to do it. if you want to contribute to helping cure this disease, making this vaccine, developing that drug, making that technology, then that is what a PhD can really do for you in terms of the research and the science, and you've got to do it for the love of that. You get mentorship, and I don't just mean from your advisors. Like, you can have mentors for all your different aspects of your life. Maybe you need someone to help you manage that work-life balance, or maybe you need someone to help with your time management, or you need someone for your career and professional development, and then you have your research advisors specifically for your research. So you have access to all these people on a university, and that's another thing, access to university resources. You have access to all these people with all this experience for essentially free. You just have to take the time to seek them out and ask for their help. And I already mentioned it, but access to university resources, things like the library, like the online resources, especially for reading journals, that's all free to you. You have access to the gym. You have access to college things like football games, sporting events, you name it, concerts, shows, because you still do have that student ID, even though you are more than a student and this is a job, but you have the perks of being a student on a really big research university. And another pro is that you have opportunities to travel. So my research experience, not only my PhD experience, has helped me see different places in the States that I've never been to through traveling to all these different scientific conferences. So I've gotten to network and meet a whole bunch of scientists and professors, and it was always fully funded by someone else, not on my dime for sure. And as a grad student, there's many opportunities to win awards and basically convince your advisor to send you to some beautiful place. Like, I just went to Puerto Rico this year, and is basically just not on my dime, and it was very nice because I've never been to Puerto Rico before. So you have opportunities to travel, opportunities to see the world and meet new people through a PhD program. And lastly, this ties into it, but it is a funded position. Even if the stipend may not be as high as what an engineer in industry would receive, it's a stipend and it's a job. I think of it as almost an entry-level job, because you have almost guaranteed funding for 5 or so years to answer a question that you're really interested in and make a contribution to the scientific field. So, in summary, I think having a long-term plan for what you want to do with a PhD is really important. I think it fuels you during the time that you're in graduate school and can really help you decide what experiences you want to get out of grad school. And with that is the end of my first YouTube video. Please leave me any more questions that you have about grad school. I plan on producing a lot more content based on this from my point of view as a first-generation woman in STEM. Leave me any questions, any of your grad school life experiences. I'd love to hear about it, and I love to connect with you guys. Bye!